The 80s are probably the most popular, most talked about, and most maybe universally recognized era for horror. So much so that I feel like 80s horror is its own genre. I'm doing this video because the folks producing In Search of Darkness 3 were rad enough to give me an affiliate link for their campaign, which is going on right now through Halloween for In Search of Darkness 3. If you haven't seen the other two before, there are documentaries that are specifically focused on 80s horror. You can find them on Shudder if you want to. So if you want to support the production of In Search of Darkness 3, there is a link in the description, which is an affiliate link specifically for me. So you'll not only be helping In Search of Darkness 3 get going, but you'll also be helping my channel out as well. Obviously, it's not required. It's just there in the description if you want. Hey there, creepy peeps. My name is Nightmare Maven. Welcome back to my channel. That was a long intro. Thanks for humoring me. As I said, I'm making this video because In Search of Darkness reached out to me to do an affiliate link and all that stuff. So I thought I would talk about 80s horror in today's video, specifically some underrated / under talked about hidden gems. I use air quotes because there's gonna inevitably be somebody in the comments that is gonna get on my case about how none of these are technically hidden gems. Just gonna get ahead of the trolls on that one. And this is not a ranked list, just FYI. I'm gonna start with Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Like everyone only ever talks about the first one, and I completely understand because it's starring the queen of 80s horror for sure, Jamie Lee Curtis. I definitely get it, but the sequel is so campy. It's so fun. The movie follows a high school teen, Vicky, who is possessed by the angry spirit of Mary Lou, who was killed at her prom 30 years before. Apparently, this was not originally meant to be a Prom Night sequel. They just renamed the movie to include Prom Night 2 to capitalize on the success of the first movie. Maybe that's why nobody else talks about it. I don't really know. There are other sequels that I haven't seen. I've only ever seen the first two. I feel like I don't ever see anybody talking about the other sequels either though. So anyway, so the movie is totally campy and totally fun. Never thought that the phrase "see you later, alligator" would ever be like the calling card of a horror movie slasher, but here we are. There's also a lot of really iconic moments and kill scenes in this movie that I think are worth checking out. Two in particular, there is the scene where Vicky is being sucked into like another dimension, I guess, by Mary Lou, so Mary Lou can possess her, and she's like sucked into a chalkboard in a classroom, and you know, like the chalkboard all of a sudden becomes like liquefied and she's like trying to fight to not be sucked in, and it just looks really cool. It's a really cool effect. Really imaginative and unique, and I really enjoy that. The kill that I think a lot of people talk about, even if they're not talking about this movie as a whole, is the locker room scene where the locker, just the one locker gets crushed with somebody inside, and it's just so cool and gruesome. If you haven't seen it before and you plan to, which I hope you do, just go in with the mindset that this is just going to be like a fun movie. Don't take it too seriously, because the movie definitely doesn't take itself seriously like at all, and that's the beauty of it. If you end up watching any of these really because of this video, please come back and tell me what you thought. I'm gonna take a sharp left turn into more serious territory now. My next recommendation is like definitely under talked about 80s horror movies, The Company of Wolves. This is a fantasy horror that is based on Angela Carter's fairy tales found in her anthology book, The Bloody Chamber. This story is essentially Little Red Riding Hood, and it makes connections between like puberty specifically when it comes to feminine bodies. And the movie itself is kind of an anthology also, but it has a very unconventional structure to it. It's kind of meant to, you know, psych you out a little bit, I think, and to keep you on your toes, like what's real, what's not real. But I love how stylized the movie is. It really does feel like a storybook. There's a lot of sequences that are like really like ethereal and dreamy, and a lot of sequences that are really dark and terrifying and scary, like all good fairy tales are, like all real fairy tales are. Of course, with a title like The Company of Wolves, you would imagine there is a transformation scene. It's terrifying in the way that like Red Riding Hood actually is. Like that story is so scary, and I feel like the transformation scene in the movie that reflects that just nails it, and nobody talks about it. Highly recommend this one. It's definitely not like the campy fun time that Hello Mary Lou is, but it's still really good. Next is space vampires. Doing a U-turn and going back to the silly 80s movies now. Vampires are already cool. Space, already cool. So Life Force, a movie that combines the two, is cool. Okay, I guess the movie's not great, but the concept is super fun. It's really unique. It's a unique take on vampires, like as aliens, technically. Directed by Tobe Hooper, Life Force follows a team battling space vampires / aliens that were brought back from a mission to Halley's Comet. The thing that stands out the most to me about this movie, and where I feel like it needs to be on this list, is the way the vampires feed. So because they're more aliens than anything else, they're like literally sucking the life force out of you. Beams of light and energy like being sucked out of the victim into the vampire. That vampire feeding is so striking. I love how creepy the result is, and the practical effects for this are really cool as well. It's really scary looking, really scary to think about, but just it's really cool at the same time. You know why we all love horror. It's scary and it's cool. Like it's a bit of a wild ride of a movie, but very fun for a movie night hangout. Okay, since it is Halloween time, I have to mention Pumpkinhead. This story follows a mourning father who calls upon Pumpkinhead to avenge his son's death. And I'll just go ahead and say the big draw for this movie, like Life Force, is not necessarily like the story or the movie as a whole, but the creature effects, which in this particular movie are done by Stan Winston. And I'll just let it speak for itself. I mean, look at him. He still holds up today. Pumpkinhead looks fucking fantastic for his age, honestly. The rest of the movie, I feel like, is kind of just okay. It's not terrible. It's just, you know, it is what it is. Big draw is Pumpkinhead as a creature. Like it deserves to be on this list for that alone. And lastly, I have to mention the Slumber Party Massacre. Started as a slasher parody, which was like filmed as a straight horror movie. Now is kind of like satirical slasher about, well, an attempted massacre at a slumber party. Just like the title says. Surprising for the time. The movie was directed by a woman, Amy Holden Jones, and it was written by a queer woman, Rita Mae Brown. What's fun about the movie is it takes typical slasher tropes and focuses them more on the violence feminine presenting people face just by existing out in the world. I love a good meta movie, so it's right up my alley. It's a fun slasher with a message. Again, me, front row seat, big bucket of popcorn. There are so many celebrated women in the horror genre, and many of them made their biggest mark during the 80s in these 80s horror movies. They're pillars of the genre now, and I feel like this movie like deliberately empowers that, but with a group of feminine characters specifically, instead of focusing on just like one final girl that's gonna make it out. But those are my like underrated, overlooked, not talked about enough, etc. 80s horror movies. Please share yours in the comments, please, please, please. And just one more time, if you want to check out and maybe support the production of In Search of Darkness 3, please use the link in my description. It helps my channel out a lot, and yeah, just do that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. This is why I don't get affiliate links very often. Subscribe, become a creepy beep today. I will see you very soon with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.